Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Rod Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3% of bad apes dictate the entire reputation of. All right, construction champions, welcome back to another amazing episode of Construction Champions Podcast, where as always, we're bringing the absolute best. Not from myself, but from amazing guests that help you continue to become the champion you're meant to be. I am going to bring my absolute best no matter what, but that's not what you're tuning in for. You're tuning in for our guests. But before we dive into this one, as always, hit one of them buttons. It helps us get the show out in front of more people, which allows us to change the mindset around the construction industry. So we have a bunch of champions running around out there. Don't be afraid of it. If you listen to this podcast, you know healthy competition is a good thing. So you want champions around you in your network, competing against them. So let's dive into it today. Today we have Sam here with us. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Why don't you introduce yourself to all the construction champions out there listening?
What's up, champions? My name is ssmith. I am the owner of Quality Government Solutions. We are a firm that specializes in connecting and building relationships between subcontractors and prime contractors in the federal marketplace.
Awesome. What a subject. This is going to be a great episode. I know that. So I'm going to dive right in there. And I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, and that is, what makes a construction champion?
Someone who values relationships. This is a relationship business. So that if we can't lead on relationships, you have nothing here. So that's what we stand on. That's what we're built after, and that is what we do.
I love it, because it is. Too often we can look at it as being very transactional, but the big jobs, the big stuff lies in the relationships. It becomes more who you know and how you know them than what exactly you do.
Well, absolutely. You got to think about it. And we work in the federal arena. So we deal with the Navy, the Army. We deal with a lot of national treasures. So we have to make sure that those things are built up to code, built up to standard, so we can protect the warfighter. We can represent the American taxpayer dollars properly. So, if the relationship's not there and we're building a $50 million facility, you're starting off on the wrong foot. So we have to be able to trust each other in a sense to get that done. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into the federal contracting aspect. That can be kind of looked at as the unicorn, the thing that a lot of guys chase, and they never get over that hump of actually getting in there. And it probably has to do with that they're just chasing it. They're not building the relationships. But you deal with this stuff every day. What would you say to inspiring contractors out there trying to operate in this world?
Yeah, it's really about positioning yourself early. So doing the market research, understanding where the projects are before they come out. By the time it hits SAM.gov, it's pretty much too late. So you want to focus, if you're bidding on projects and you want to be a prime, you have to focus on answering the RFIs, the requests for informations, the sources sought, things of those nature, to make sure that the customer knows who you are beforehand. So a lot of times people, they just wait too late. They want to go and respond to a a quote or a request for a proposal, and at that time it's already been too late. So that's probably the biggest thing if you want to be a prime. Um, but for those who want to get their feet wet in the space and they are not really ready to deal with all the things that come with doing a federal job as a prime, you can work as a subcontractor, and that's what we specialize in. You can work with a prime, you can be working on a federal installation, getting the experience, building those relationships with the customers. So your project engineers, your project managers, building those relationships, that goes a long way with establishing yourself as a firm.
Can you explain the differences between a prime and a sub for people that are listening that might not understand what that means from a federal contracting perspective?
Absolutely. So your prime contractor is responsible for the entire project. They will have the liability for the project, and they're responsible for knowing the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation. That's like the Bible for um, federal contracting. They're responsible for communicating with the contract officers. They're responsible for the entire project. The subcontractor is hired by the prime contractor. And it's your plumbers, it's your mechanical, it's your HVAC, your concrete guys. Those guys, they do the work and they really make the project move. So, but they're not responsible for, the insurance, the bonding. Now, sometimes that stuff may flow down to the subcontractor, but depending on the requirements of the contract. But you're basically plug and play if you're a sub going into a prime situation.
All right, is being a sub the best way to start to get into this, or how does that work?
Being a sub is, I would say, in my opinion, the best way to get in because you don't incur all of the risk of being a prime and you're there and you can learn and build relationships. When you decide that you want to become a prime, you have to do a ton of things as far as developing your back office, making sure that you're ready for, federal certified payroll. You have to hit certain standards when it comes to your cybersecurity. You have to have bonding in construction projects, which can be difficult to get. Sometimes you're dealing with security clearances, so it's a very big investment when you decide that you want to become a prime, and it's a big opportunity, but it could be a burden if you're not ready because it's serious. The subcontractor, you're kind of able to bypass that stuff and get onto a project, see if it's right for you and if it's something that can help you grow and scale.
So it sounds like a prime, you're just doing more of managing the project than actually doing anything. So if you're used to doing the actual work, doing that aspect of it, you probably don't want to jump in and be a prime until you understand what it's like to have to actually run a project.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So being a prime is like you said, doing the administrative side. Now there are rules within the FAR that says you only can sub out X amount. So you may have to do um you could sub out to 85% of the work on these projects, depending on again what the regulations say.
So for a guy out there looking to get into becoming a sub, is that like just watching Sam? What I guess what's the process for that?
Yeah, so if you're looking to become a sub on a project, uh you want to start by establishing relationships with prime contractors, finding out who are on the federal projects, looking at the data, looking at information, keeping an eye on SAM.gov, or you can work with Quality Government Solutions and you know, we facilitate those relationships for you. We do have a vetting process. Right now, we have a waiting list as far as working with different subs, but we're always talking to people and bringing people in because things change daily.
Hmm.
if you want to become a sub, that's the first thing you want to do is you want to reach out to those prime contractors that are actually doing work.
That absolutely makes sense because you got to get on the radar. I get like if you're doing residential construction or you're doing something like that, like you have to pivot who your actual customer is. Your customer becomes the prime.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with these large companies, they do have small business liaisons and small business offices that you can reach out to. But I mean, it's you have to be consistent. Believe it or not, that they struggle to find good quality, competent subs that have capacity on these projects. So, painters, roofing guys. I mean, you name it, concrete, you name it. They struggle to find good, competent ones. And typically in this space, you'll get a company that will be coming from, overseas bidding on these projects. They have a base set up here, but the project may be here in Georgia, but the company may be based in Miami. But you got to think they're not really familiar with the landscape of Atlanta. So, as you know, they run through a lot of subs, looking for the right one.
Yeah, that leads me into my question I had in my mind. Is this like really a national thing? Like for local guides, do you have to be by like say military establishments or what does that look like?
Absolutely not. It totally depends on what you are. If you're a regional company, there's bases in every state. You can work in any state that you like. We have a roofing client right now. They do work all across the country. They're based here in Georgia, but they have relationships with suppliers where they can get access to material, they can get access to guys, and they can go to work in Seattle, Washington if need be. So it really just depends on how you're set up.
Yeah, so there's no right way or wrong way when it comes to that. If it's probably just opportunity, if I had to guess. The more you can span out, the greater your opportunity is going to be. But there is opportunity in local markets as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just having that relationship, figuring out where your bases are. If you are, a small painting company and you want to go try to find work at Fort Gilliam here in Atlanta, all you have to do is just figure out, who's who in that base. Um, find a construction team who's responsible and start building relationships there. And then they have small jobs. They have simplify something called simplify acquisitions, where if it's under a certain dollar threshold, they'll just swipe the credit card for you. So if it's under 10, 15 grand, they'll swipe the credit card for you so you can do small jobs like that. It just really just depends on what you want to do.
That's pretty amazing because I think one of the things you hear about when it comes to government contracting a lot is the delay in actually collecting the money because of everything that has to happen. That might just be a misconception that people think.
Well, that happens more often in your state and local municipal level type contracts because the money flows down from the feds. But at the federal level, you could pretty much guarantee you're gonna get paid 15 to 30 days
Mm.
uh, dealing with the federal space. So that's another good thing about working at this level.
That's awesome. And you touched on something earlier about they're always looking for great subs. I take it if you come in and you do a kick-ass job, you're probably going to have a lot more work. But if you come in and fumble it could be the end of your government contracting career.
Absolutely, absolutely. The federal government is very particular in what they want. Um, and so you have to do a good job. If you do a good job, you'll eat for a long time. And you can really do a great job. You can make a way for yourself by just doing subcontracts. There's 5, 10, $15 million subcontracts out there, and you won't have to even touch a prime contract.
Okay, so there's a career trajectory to just be a sub and never move into actually being the prime.
Yes. Yep. You said it.
That I mean that's not a bad gig, I'm sure. Like for guys that are out there and they're good at it, it's the work's going to be coming in. Is there different like code requirements and stuff that you run into or differently than what you would typically be expected to do? You said they know what they want. Is it different or is it just they want perfection?
Um, so I'll give you an example. So we just put in for a subcontract at a base in Louisiana for they're ripping out the runway and they're putting a whole another one in, a new one in. So my guys were talking to the project managers over there, like, dude, this quote is about to be crazy because we have to take, we have to go and get this certified stone. It's 2 hours away from the site, and we're hauling it 2 hours back. Like, I've never did a quote like this. And the PM, he said, man, listen, this is the feds here. They want this certified stone. Everywhere else that's close to here, they don't carry it. So we can't use that. So, you know, quote them correctly. And so, and my guy, he couldn't really understand it because he's used to dealing with municipal and state contracts, and it's totally different.
Hmm.
Yes. And so, even certifications, a lot of the certifications that you think may fly in the state, they don't matter at the federal level.
So it's basically they're going to say what they want, and that is what you have to bid and then have to do. Like there's not any wiggle room in that. Like when you're talking about the stone that's required 2 hours away, they don't care. They want that stone on that runway.
Yes, yes. And the time to negotiate with them, because there are negotiations, there's negotiated contracts. But the time to let them know what is best for them is during that request for information stage, because that's their market research time. So they'll reach out to you. If you're in SAM.gov, I highly suggest that even, some of your competitors, you might team up with them. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive, but sometimes you may want to team up with your one of your competitors and answer a response or a request for information, because it gives them market research, and then it also qualifies you guys to bid on a contract as a small business. If they don't get two or more responses on those RFIs, they'll put it out to open competition and let the big boys go and get it. So that's another little nugget in a space that's different.
Yeah, I got not a ton of experience in this, but I do know we were working with the city of New York and we had the opportunity to get on an RFI, and the guy that worked for me that was doing that was like, this is gold. Because once we're on here, we're looked at as being one of the experts. We're able to help draft this in a way that we can fulfill it and others might not be able to. And when we then bid it, we're looked at completely different because we did the groundwork to build the relationships to get asked to be involved in the RFI. And then that leads into the trickle down effect, like you said. If it's something they move forward with, you're positioned very well.
Absolutely. There's been cases where companies have been awarded directly off of RFI. So it's in your best interest to answer those. And teaming is highly, highly recommended in this space as well. So that's something that we promote. Um, we like to put teams together that are competent, and we might be missing maybe one piece. And what we'll do is we'll go to the tribes, we'll go to the native corporations, and they'll prime it and subcontract 85% of the work back out to us. We just have to come to the tables with competent teams ready to go. And that's another tool that we use to grow companies as well.
So you can kind of orchestrate this.
Yes. Yes. And that's what they recommend. So, we all come together, figure out who is who, and that's something that we're doing here in Atlanta is we identify companies, we vet them, we make sure everybody, wants to work together, and we'll come and sit down and say, hey, this is what we can do. Let's put something together and let's go to the table and get, a 50 million, $75 million job and just go at it.
That that could, I mean, a 70 or 50, $75 million job. I mean, that's a big contract. Is that like what's the timelines on most of this stuff?
The government moves slow. They absolutely do. And but the thing about working with the 8A, and if you're not familiar with the 8A program, it's a business development program that is designed to scale your business. Um, and so it can move slow or it can move fast depending on who you are.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, overall, the government does move slow. We're looking at, it takes 6 months sometimes to hear back from the government for RFI. So I don't want to sit here and say that things move fast. They definitely move slow, but it's worth it. And like I said, with those tribes, they can get sole sourced up to $100 million contract
Mm.
at one time. Yeah.
So what I know, I'm going to relay this to personal experience is, we were a pure residential construction company, and we made the decision to move into commercial construction, and we hired a person to be like our relationship builder. And we looked at it as a 3 to 5 year play before it really was going to become something. Like the first couple of years was going to basically be donuts and coffee, building relationships, and maybe we get something in a couple of years. But we knew everything we were investing into that was for a greater outcome down the road. Is the government contracting the same way, where you're investing in the long term more than just one or two projects?
Absolutely. I just left New Orleans. I went to the 8A conference down there in New Orleans, and you have to go to these events to build relationships. So I've go to the conferences. Sammy is another good one. I go to their conference and talk to contractors, talk to contract officers, talk to small business liaisons. OSDI booths are good people to talk to. So you're absolutely right. Donuts and coffee, man. It works wonders. I've Instacart orders to the office, anything you can do to build a relationship, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, and just continue to educate. Like that's what we found is like we were there to educate people on who we were as a company, what we did, and how good we were at it. So when these bids came down, we were in a place where we were already known. When we put in all bid, it wasn't just some, I don't even know this company, throw that one in the trash.
Right. And that's what you want. You want to be known. You want to be the person that is continuously sending in the capability statement, continuously putting together scenarios that work best for the customer. And the government is risk averse. So if they don't know you, they're not going to trust you with a $5 million job, so you have to build that relationship. Absolutely.
So when say you're a sub, and so you're on, when the prime bids it, you would be on that contract. So they're going to be looking at the whole scope, like what has been put together to do this work, or are they just going solely based off the prime?
They will consider the team. So they'll look at who is subbing on this project. So when you uh deal with these primes, they're going to ask you for information that the government is going to want to know too. It's not going to be in depth. Some of the contracts require that you be registered in SAM.gov as a sub. Some of them don't. So it really just depends on the agency the contract officer that you're dealing with.
Mm. So how do you help guys get into this industry and help them start to thrive?
Well, so we have a readiness quiz that we offer, and it's completely free. You take that readiness quiz, and it'll give you a number. It'll give you a score just to see, where you stand as a subcontractor. And we start there. If you want to schedule a call with us, like a Zoom call, we'll let you know, where you stand and how we can help. That's the first step that we do.
And then what does that look like? Say they meet the criteria. Because I'm guessing a lot of people that submit this probably don't meet the criteria to begin with, but you can always get there. But say somebody does.
Yeah, if they meet the criteria, we'll set up a time to speak, and we'll figure out, hey, where can you best add value? What do you want to do? What are your goals? Sometimes they might want to jump in straight in and be a prime. That's totally fine. But we'll sit down, have a meeting, and figure out what they want to do. If they want to team with other people, if they're fine with that, we can facilitate that. But it's really just discovering where their strengths are and how we can help best.
All right. And when you talk about teaming with other people, I'm taking it you could be a 1 or 2 person operation and still get into this? Or is there like a size that you need to get to before you start dancing in this word?
There's no particular size. Now, if you're small and you're, screwing in doorknobs and that's what you do, maybe you can get away with it, but you want to have a team when you're dealing with this because there's so much to do, especially if you're a prime uh in a sub. And you wanna start practicing early, and you want to make sure that you're getting your ducks in a row and lining yourself up to be as strong as possible. So a team is definitely recommended on in at least a back office, something that where you can, do your payroll, make sure everything is lined up properly.
Yeah, and you've referenced back office a few times here, so I'm guessing having your eggs in a row from a paperwork and documentation perspective sounds like it's just as important, if not more, than actually being competent at doing the work.
Oh yeah, it's essential. We've had times where we've lost bids just because the font was 14 instead of 12 on the response. Literally, I mean, it happens, dude. You wouldn't believe it, but it happens. Yeah, it's very important.
That's crazy. And I got to ask why I have the expert on here, because I know what people are thinking. A lot of times people just think this is the lowest bid in industry. You get into this and all they do is accept the lowest bids, and it's always a race to the bottom. Is that true? Is that what it is? Or
Um, to a certain extent, yes. Uh, they do have lowest bid technically acceptable. So they'll do their own analysis and they'll know if you're like severely underbid in the project, and that's something that they don't want. But they also look at value as well. So which one offers the best value to the government? And then within the contract, there is evaluation criteria. So price might be third on the list when it comes to that. So it just depends on the contract that you're dealing with.
okay.
Mhm.
I've heard some rumblings, especially in the commercial construction realm, where there's a move more towards the center, like not the lowest, cheapest guy, not the most, the like that value, what you're talking about from a value. They're coming in at a price point that I believe they can get this job done for that, and they're going to be able to complete it. We're not going to have any problems. And there's this move away from just taking the lowest bid to take the lowest bid. Do you see some of that happening in government contracting at all, or
Yeah, absolutely. So um, like I said, they want to take value. So price is not always that number one factor. And you can bypass all of that when you get to the negotiation stage, right? And so they may not find someone who can do the job the way that they want it. You may be the only company that a responded or that they have within their the ecosystem that can do it. And at that point, you can negotiate and you don't have to deal with that race to the bottom. And mind you, only about 50% of the contracts are even posted in SAM.gov. So the majority of those contracts are negotiated. And that's where you want to find yourself. So you're not in that race to the bottom.
Like with the stone, you're probably hoping you're the only one that wants to move that stone 2 hours.
Oh, please, Lord. Yeah, because a lot of people, they can't find a lot of people to do a lot of this stuff because of just, the security. They want to make sure that, those planes can fly and they're not going to have any problems, you know, on those bases.
So when it comes to like complicated stuff or where there's logistic stuff like what you're talking about with the runway, it probably becomes a very small field of people that are even interested in getting into that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, if you're a small company, you want to think in the think about specializing in something so that you can be that go-to company when they call your number.
Like for that one, the dump truck driver.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a struggle. We're looking for drivers. When that comes out, we're looking for drivers that can also carry wet cement. And that was something that was because the way that they're doing the runway, they have to produce it on the actual site, and they have to carry it about a mile away from the plant. And so they have to dump wet concrete in the back of the truck. Well, my guy was like, man, not many people want no wet concrete in the back of that dump because it'll tear it up. And I was like, dude, you have to price it you got to price it accordingly. If it's going to damage their truck, price it accordingly and see if there's somebody out there that wants to do it because they're going to pay if they can't find anybody to do it. And they understand that.
Now, so I mean that's a real complex job. Is that like a heavy percentage of this stuff is like complex, or is most of it pretty basic?
Again, it just depends on the job. Uh, if it's on a base, anything that has to do with the military, it can become really complex because again, you're dealing with security. We're on a base, uh, and they just want quality products. It just depends on who you're dealing with.
Awesome, man. Well, I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation. We really dove into something that we over 200 plus like 240 episodes have never really dove into the government contracting side of this. So thank you for bringing that knowledge on here and having this conversation today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can help some of you guys come over to the federal side.
I hope so as well. And if for anybody that's looking to do that or maybe want to have a conversation about it, where's the best place to find you, your company, to connect with you?
Yes, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go ahead if you can leave my LinkedIn link in the show notes.
It'll all be in there.
Yeah, Sam Smith. You'll probably get a million of those. You can also visit our website www.qgovsolutions.com and then go ahead and fill out that form, and we'll send you that readiness quiz, and we'll reach out if you guys are a good fit.
Awesome, man. Well, Sam, like I said, thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
But thank you, Ron. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, construction champions, another episode in the bag. Well, we dove into a side of the construction industry that we've not spent a lot of time talking about. There's huge opportunity, there's huge risk, there's huge everything. It's where do you want to take your business? Where are you currently at? What is that business model? I work with a lot of veterans that own construction companies, and a lot of them started them with one thing in mind. I'm just going to go do government contracting. And, one of my biggest pieces of advice to them is to get really good at what you do first. Build a resume, and don't let a government contracting job be the first job you go do. But we see that a lot. We see companies that are just that's what they want to go do. They're going to go do some sub work, and then they want to become a prime. Like, that's their business model. That's where they want to go. I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that or if there's anything right with it. I just think becoming a master in getting the unknown figured out before the stakes become high. Like, you don't want that first job to go south, and then next thing you can never sub again because you got this bad reputation when you could have went out and done some residential or done some commercial stuff to prepare yourself to understand how this job's going to flow, all the stuff around it. For all the veterans in the construction industry that are listening, you guys know what it was like when what your first project was like, what your 10th, what your 100th was like. There's learning curves along the way. And the better you get at that, the lower you de-risk the high stakes. We've talked about it on here many times. Is a lot of times you're just chasing the big job that's going to fix everything, but that's the job that bankrupts you. Because everything needs to be fixed before you take the big job on. It sounds like it's very important when you're doing government contracting, is you might want to have this stuff fixed. So reach out to Sam, take his quiz, and see. All right, I think you're probably going to learn something about your business taking that quiz personally. And I think it'll probably be an eye-opener of where you're currently at and where you think you're at. So Construction Champions, make sure you check out all our fantastic partners. And until next time, be the champion you were meant to be.